good afternoon and good morning to all of you. And thank you for joining us today in this side event on strengthening instrument for policy implementations in science, technology, and innovation, which is organized by the OACPS, UNESCO, the UN-IATT work stream on capacity building in the framework of the 9th SDI Forum. My name is Alessandro Bello. I'm part of a technical assistant unit that is supporting the Secretariat of the Organization of the African, Caribbean, Pacific States, the OACPS, in the implementation of the OACPS Research Innovation Program. And I will be serving as a moderator for this first part of this side event. We're very glad to see that we have around 70 participants. I'm pretty much sure that many others will be joining us and from different countries. And I believe that what brings all of us today here is our shared belief in the power of science, technology, and innovation as a catalyst for change and for a change towards a sustainable development. But SDI isn't just a buzzword. It's the cornerstone of progress. From healthcare to agriculture to climate change to energy, we need SDI. However, it's not just about investing more in SDI. We also need to have policy, sound policy and effective policy implementation. So today we will learn more about these two aspects through two publications that aims exactly to this, provide support to countries in enhancing capacities to the design and implementation of policies and instruments. These are the OACPS handbook on how to formulate and implementing effective research and innovation policy, elaborated within the framework of the OACPS Research Innovation PSF in collaboration with the UN-IATT, and the UNESCO report on science, technology, innovation policy instrument for the SDGs, a global outlook. You see both of them in our slide. Without further ado, I would like to give the floor to the Assistant Secretary General in charge of the Department of Political Affairs and Human Development of the OACPS Secretariat, Dr. Norbert Richard Ibrahim, to officially open this side event. Monsieur le Secrétaire Général, à vous la parole.
Merci. Thank you, Alessandro, for giving me the floor. Distinguished authorities, dear representatives of UN agencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear participants, it's my pleasure to extend a warm welcome to all participants joining us for this online side events, strengthening instruments for policy implementation in science, technology, and innovation that takes place in the margins of the 9th Annual Multi-stakeholder Forum of Science, Technology, and Innovation, which has been organized by the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, with a focus on sustainable development. This side event is jointly organized by Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States, UNESCO, and the UN Interagency Task Team on STI for SDGs work stream 6 on capacity building, UN-IATT WS6. Today's event provides a value platform for discussing crucial strategies to enhance policy implementation in dynamic field of science, technology, and innovation. Through insightful cases, studies, and the presentation of key findings from two recent publications, we aim to deepen our understanding and catalyze action towards more effective policies in this critical domain. Allow me to further underscore the significance of today's discussion by acknowledging the pivotal role of science, technology, and innovation policies in driving progress and fostering sustainable development. They are critical components to address pressing societal, environmental, and economic challenges of our time. They play a crucial role in speeding up the green transition, generating new enterprises and jobs, and fighting against climate change and eradicating poverty. Research and innovation rely not only on appropriate funding and expertise, but also on conducive policy framework conditions. Therefore, it is crucial for countries to develop evidence-based and tailored policies with a collaborative approach and a broad stakeholder participation to foster synergies within the research and innovation environment. Recognizing the paramount importance of establishing sound and evidence-based policies, acknowledging the value of knowledge sharing and peer learning among countries, the Secretariat of OACPS launched in collaboration with the UN-IATT a mutual learning exercise on formulating and implementing effective research and innovation policies with the participation of representatives from 15 countries in sub-Saharan Africa. This initiative falls within the framework of the Policy Support Facility as part of the OACPS Research and Innovation Program funded by our historic partner, the European Union. Today, we will be presenting to you some highlights as well as testimonials on the resulting effort of this mutual learning exercise and the handbook that emerged from it. This handbook distills good practices and provides practical guidance for policymakers across our member states. It stands as a valuable resource in our collective endeavor to harness the power of research and innovation for sustainable development. Additionally, we eagerly anticipate the forthcoming publication from UNESCO, titled Science, Technology and Innovation Policy Instruments for the Sustainable Development Goals, a global outlook, drawing on the statistics from the Global Observatory of Science, Technology and Innovation Policy Instruments, which is a global research platform for STI policy. This report discussed global trends, good practices, and case studies concerning policy instruments, covering various topics and regions. As we engage in today's discussions and delve into the insights provided by our esteemed panelists and explore the insights presented in the two publications, let us remain mindful of the transformative potential inherent in robust policy frameworks for science, technology, and innovation. Through sustained collaboration and concerted action, we can pave the way for a future where innovation serves as a cornerstone of progress and prosperity for all. I wish you all a fruitful event and look forward to the valuable insights that will emerge from our exchange today. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Sous-Secrétaire Général, pour vos temps et messages inspirants. And now I would like to invite Anna Persic, Program Specialist from UNESCO, to take the floor. Thank you, Anna. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alessandra, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. We're very happy to be part of the organizations and organizers, co-organizers of this event, which is, as you said, organized on the margins of the SDI Forum in New York. And it is also nice to have this event organized also with the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States and the United Nations Interagency Task Team that brings together the different agencies that work on science, technology, innovation related issues. The reason why it's nice to be in this event is because it really brings together different partners from different kind of perspectives. And what we've heard over and over again during the discussions yesterday at the STI Forum here in New York is that for STI to really reach its potential, it also has to be built on different partnerships coming from different multi-stakeholder actors, and also looking into the connections between the UN organizations, governmental organizations, governments at different levels, and also expert organizations. So this side event for us is also an interesting platform to showcase the power of partnerships, also when it comes to policy development and policy implementation and monitoring. In UNESCO, the work that we do in the area of STI policy is really to collaborate with member states to strengthen their national STI systems by supporting the development of evidence-based policies and policy instruments, but also by looking into the existing STI policy information nationally and internationally, analyzing and collecting this information that serves also for countries to learn from each other and to try to see what works, what doesn't work, what can be expanded, what can be scaled up. We also work with countries to monitor their STI systems and also to assist them in the implementation of the STI policies and looking into what the impacts of these policies are. As it was mentioned before, UNESCO has a global observatory on science policy instruments, the UNESCO GoSpin platform. Through this platform, we propose a standard methodology to collect information on STI policies and policy instruments, but also on a broader supporting STI landscapes. And again, the idea is to assist member states to collect and analyze both in quantitative and qualitative way the information on STI that can also be compared between the countries, but also to reinforce their capacities for analysis and for policy making. As we heard, the information that is in the UNESCO GoSpin platform, and it really comes from over 100 countries. There are instruments, policies from over 100 countries that look into different aspects of STI. And using that information, analyzing this information, we just pulled everything together into this global outlook on science, technology, innovation, policy instruments for sustainable development goals. And you will hear later on from Manuel more information and more insights into the key messages and into the key instruments that have been collected in this way. So it is very important to collect this type of information, to share this type of information, whether it's through publications or online platforms or through dialogues like this in the context of the UN STI Forum. So we really do hope that this event is going to be not one off event, but that there will be some additional ones coming in the future where we can really share information on policies and policy instruments that exist, that work, and also challenges with those where we have some issues with regard to implementation or where there is a need for revision and more learning in terms of creating policies that really do match what is needed for countries and for communities. So I'm not going to be too long. I'm very much looking forward to the discussions today and also to interacting with all of you also after the event and exchanging on this interesting topic of STI policies for SDGs. So thank you very much, and I wish you an excellent event.
Thank you very much, Anna, for your words. And I think we can now start getting to the heart of the subject and the core of this side event. And let's start by learning more about how to set up and implement successful and effective research and innovation policies through the first publication, the OACPS handbook, which is elaborated in the framework of the mutual learning exercise of the OACPS R&I Policy Support Facility, or PSF. Brief mention on the PSF, which is a component of the OACPS R&I program funded by the European Union, and it's aimed at enhancing the quality and efficiency of the R&I ecosystems in the African, Caribbean, and Pacific countries through tailor-made and on-demand support. So this handbook really underscores the critical role of research and innovation policies in the national development, identify also gaps in these areas, and offer especially recommendations on what are the possible approaches to address these gaps. The publication will be presented by Chuck Daniels, chair of the expert panel of this mutual learning exercise, and also main author of the handbook, and will also be followed, as said, by 3 panelists who also contributed to the handbook. Mukhtar Darbo, Halmed El-Mouna, and Amina Christel. So, Chuck, could you please tell us more about this handbook and how it supports countries in the implementation and the setting up of policies? Thank you.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Nice to see all of you. First of all, to say thank you to the organizers for this extremely important topic, which we had to spend some time also to work on. And then thank you to the Secretary General, OACPS, and colleagues from the EU who are the funder, as we heard. And also many thanks to UNESCO and the colleagues there. Equally important is thanks to the countries who helped us in the process of developing the handbook. And then I also have 2 colleagues who work with me. So Butsanani, Tasheba, and Miriam, just to express thanks and acknowledgement to them as well for being part of being the co-authors in the work. As we've heard, we will try to just share a little bit of insight. The time is not long, so we won't spend much time, just a couple of slides to help us explain. We've been hearing about this topic for a while, the need for improving formulation, but more importantly, implementation. So the handbook combines both of these topics very nicely and seamlessly, but is again bringing different countries into the work to try to explore these issues. So it's a very demand-driven led approach, which the countries participated quite actively. As we can see here, I've already mentioned the countries, but also thanks to the IATT team who have been part of this again. So apologies, I forgot that. We can see the list of countries who were involved in the work. So Cameroon, in a nutshell, you can read it, but it's 15 countries we work with in developing the handbook. So it's a very, very participatory approach that brought in a good team of policymakers and researchers from the country, but also with contributions from the UN, from the EU, from African Union. The African Union was also there. The approach has been what has been referred to a couple of times now, MLE, mutual learning exercise. Was a very important part of the methodology. So we'll speak a bit more on that as I go to the next slide. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so this is briefly what we're covering. I've introduced the MLE, the mutual learning exercise already. It's flickering on my side, but I'll go ahead. What the aim of the mutual learning exercise and the value addition really is to bring a lot of knowledge and experience between different countries and among countries, but also to enhance capacity of policymakers and policy making in the process. So we dealt with a lot of points, a couple of days of face-to-face meeting, coupled with online sessions, and then coupled with a very robust reviews of the draft. So it was a very good experience and learning for all of us involved. And then the next thing we'll try to address is, again, why do we actually need a book like this, or a handbook at this time? But also, what do we need it for? We've heard some of the reasons that has been, that we've been talking about already. why policy is important, policy formulation, but more importantly, policy implementation has been weak in many low and low-income countries. Using experiences from Africa, we can share how implementation has been really a struggle to get to optimum levels. But also beyond implementation, we've been having challenges around evaluation, around the governance of STI systems, but also STI policy itself. Governance in a way that actually fosters a transformation, but also enables impact from policy. So we have several policies in place, but there's a serious disappointment with many of them in the area of implementation. Again, so we deal with this very strongly in the book. So why is this? We're hoping to contribute to knowledge on how implementation especially can be improved, but also understanding that implementation is not the challenge we experience in implementation doesn't come from implementation alone. Some of them could have been addressed during the formulation process. So effective formulation also improves the chances of implementation. So these are some of the reasons why the handbook combines formulation and implementation, because they're very connected, and the line between them can often be blurred, because as formulation is ongoing and continuing, of course, implementation is also starting in the process. So we have discussed the method a little bit, that we went through a very robust mutual learning exercise, which combined just physical meetings, workshops, online reviews, feedback from countries, but also we collected some interviews. We interviewed policymakers, so there was a good, robust mixed method approach we used, both secondary data and primary data as well. We just have a couple of slides, so we won't be too long. Many of the points have been covered. We can go to the next slide, please. So if you look at the book, where have we tried to add value in what we've been doing? So one of the early steps, one of the early parts of the aspects of the methodology was to identify what areas to focus on. There are many points to address in policymaking. However, what will be the areas that if we cover them will actually add value, will help to unblock some of the challenges we're having or improve the process. So in a co-creation process with the 15 countries, as we mentioned, we went through a robust approach to identify areas of where we see intervention will work. These areas, as you see on my left, looking at formulation, obviously, and implementation, which is the title of the book, but also funding. There was a lot of focus on funding. And then we looked at monitoring, evaluation, and learning, and reporting, covering all of those. Issues of capacity at different levels, individual capacity, institutional capacity, skills issues came up quite strongly. And then we also looked at inclusiveness. Some of us may not be very conversant with this, but what we identified was inclusiveness or lack of inclusiveness or lack of inclusion has had a major impact on the way policies are formulated, but also implemented. So we covered these areas. And then we also dealt with the issue of prioritization. Again, as I've mentioned, these topics, these areas, the chapters, we've now used this to be chapters, came out from the countries, from discussion with the countries in real co-creation environment where we say, look at the topics that would be. And so prioritization came out because we also had to prioritize ourselves. But the challenge has been for many low-income countries, almost everything is a priority. So there was a need to understand that we can't focus on everything in policy. So how do we prioritize? So helping to develop a process or some understanding to prioritization. Again, priorities here doesn't mean other things are less important, but it means we can actually use some themes or some topics in policy as entry points to other topics. So by prioritizing and focusing a few areas doesn't mean we are disregarding others, but it means we're using those as entry points to others to then take a systems approach, but entering through specific areas. So that's why the topic came up as well. And then I did mention briefly the importance of governance. governance in policy, governance of actors, governance of funding, governance of several components. Again, this has been very major area where we have issues of fragmentation that keeps coming up, a silo approach, government and ministries and industry not working together, but also issues of not just duplication and wastage in resources. So governance was covered. And then lastly, we looked at the politics in policymaking and the role of politics and power. So how do these actually play? We know political cycles affect policies, and there's a lot of short-termism in policy as well. So this area was also looked into to try to understand how do we improve, how do we take politics and power into account. What you have on the right is a bit tight and small, but what it's trying to show is that if you look at them underneath, you can see again where we focused on the value addition area. So my colleague later will talk about instruments a bit more, but you see we look at challenges, but then we also look at instruments. We look at specific tools and instruments. So again, it's a handbook, so it's a practical resource. It's not theoretical just to read and drop and go away. And then we provided case studies. Look at issues of case studies to try to embed or contextualize the discussions. Case studies from almost all of the countries, from Kenya, from Zambia, from many of the countries. You can see case studies, specific case studies to try to help to unpack the discussions. And then lastly, we also had clear recommendations, very specific. We try to reduce the number so it's not a very long list that becomes unwieldy. So this structure has been used in the book. Again, why? To make it very clear what value are we adding. If you're looking at monitoring, evaluation, and implementation, what tools, what instruments, what actions, what specific areas should we be looking at, and how, and what are we proposing? So we've used this structure in the entire book, but again, the idea being, how do we add value? Where do we add value? What are the issues that policymakers are struggling with in the process of policymaking? Yeah, this is just an example of how the entire, what we have done in the book. So we have one of these, and then the next slide we have is a conclusion slide. So I won't go through all of them. What you see is the way we have tried to unpack what we have done in the book, as I was explaining. We have an overview area. Why do each topic, have we dealt with each of the topic? Why do we need policies? Why do we need formulation? So we cover those areas, and then we look at the challenges, again, understanding the challenge, deeper understanding of what the challenges are. And then before we go into the areas of we look at, okay, what are the things that needs to be done now? What are the low-hanging fruit? And then we present, again, sets of instruments, case studies to justify the cases, to present, like you can see here, a case study from Zambia that highlights the importance of formulation or reformulation as well, based on drawing on some work from UNCTAD colleagues, Demo and other colleagues as well, and the choice of instruments you need to look into when you're designing this. And then lastly, of course, we go into specific, and as we mentioned, very context-specific recommendations on what to do going forward on this. We can go to the next slide, the conclusion slide, just to bring some of the key messages out as well. Here, exactly. So here we can see there's the overwhelming understanding is countries acknowledge the importance of research and innovation policy. So there's a lot of effort. A few countries don't have explicit policy. Nevertheless, they have a policy instruments. They are implementing policy projects. Research and innovation projects are being implemented. So there is a strong understanding. However, as we've mentioned, implementation remains weak, coupled with, in some cases, there's lack of governance frameworks, and in many of the countries, we outline countries where these issues are. Again, so combined, these challenges continue to weaken the ability to create, to formulate, and policy that fosters transformation, and as we know, in the SDGs era, connect to the SDGs. I won't go through all of them, as we've mentioned. Again, the emphasis here is, again, to support capacity development, but also peer learning, which we've been doing, continuing on the peer learning work, and then to foster experimentation. Why are we talking experimentation? Because we want to look at different ways of addressing these issues, different way of actually dealing with them, but a practical way that is tried and tested. One of the challenge we have now is policies get formulated, and we just going straight into implementation, or attempt to go into implementation, and then discover later that they are not working. So there is room, or we made a strong case for experimentation and demonstration of these new approaches as well before we can take them forward. I'll leave it here and hand over to Ali. Ali, thank you. And
Thank you very much, Chuck, for highlighting some aspects. As Chuck said, of this handbook, and as Chuck said, representative at director level from over 15 countries participated to this mutual learning exercise and provided input for the elaboration of this handbook. So it's really hands-on. It shows what works and also what doesn't work. I think that personally speaking, we learn a lot from good practices, but even more from what doesn't work. So we invite all of you to go through this document. We will have now some words from discussants from Cameroon, the Gambia, and Mauritania. As we are a bit of late, please, we will not have the questions and answer session. So I invite you to write your questions in the chat box. And also, I will invite the first panelist. Allow me to give the floor to the first intervener, Mukhtar Darbo, Deputy Permanent Secretary Technical of the Ministry of Higher Education, Research and Science and Technology of the Gambia. Mukhtar, you have 2-3 minutes. So just in 2-3 minutes, can you please tell us what are the main challenges faced in the development and implementation of effective R&I policies? And how do you see this handbook addressing these challenges? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ali. 2-3 minutes is really have to squeeze everything, but I'll try. First of all, we acknowledge with deep appreciation the tremendous efforts of the OACPS Secretariat for their foresight, and that the democratic values reflected in the process involving a broad range of expertise from the ACP countries demonstrate a commitment to inclusive and participatory decision-making. The MLE has definitely been a mutual learning exercise. The handbook drafted by the ACP for the ACP countries signifies a collective effort to address the challenges faced by ACP countries from a research and innovation perspective, aligning with the Sustainable Development Goals. This collaborative endeavor underscores the ACP's commitment to advancing the development agendas through evidence-based and collaborative approaches in R&I policy making. Now, the main challenges faced in the development and implementation of effective R&I policies in ACP countries include limited capacities and skills, fragmented governance structures, poor coordination among stakeholders, a lack of alignment with national development priorities, and inadequate funding, among other challenges. These challenges often result in underperformance of R&I ecosystems, hindering countries from reaping the full benefits of R&I in terms of economic growth, technological development, and addressing societal challenges. The handbook on how countries can formulate and implement effective R&I policies published by the OACPS address these challenges by providing a comprehensive guide to enhancing R&I policy making and strengthening policy implementation efforts. It covers areas such as policy formulation and implementation, funding, monitoring, evaluation, accountability, learning, and foresight. It also covers issues related to capacity and skills, inclusiveness, prioritization, alignment with other policies, governance and politics and power relations in R&I policy making. By offering these insights, best practices, and recommendations in these areas, the MLE handbook of the OACPS aims to help the ACP countries develop evidence-based, tailored and targeted R&I policies with collaborative approaches and broad stakeholder participation. In addition, the handbook also emphasizes the importance of enhancing various aspects of the policy cycle to ensure that R&I policies effectively contribute to economic, social, and environmental goals. It highlights the need for coordination, cooperation, and inclusive approaches in the policymaking processes, as well as the importance of addressing the governance challenges and strengthening capacities, and as well as funding for R&I. So in conclusion, the handbook is a valuable resource for all ACP countries seeking to overcome the challenges in R&I policy development and implementation. It offers practical guidance and recommendations that, if properly implemented, would help these countries harness the transformative power of R&I for sustainable development and inclusive growth. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mukhtar. Thank you for your words, for your time, and for highlighting some of the challenges that the countries are facing where they are developing policies and strategies. And speaking of implementing, setting up strategies, I would like to give the floor now to Hamed El Mouna, who is the Senior Advisor to the Minister of Higher Education and Scientific Research of Mauritania. Hamed, you have recently approved your first National Research and Innovation Strategy. So could you please provide us some example of how you have already also utilized the handbook in your country policy formulation and presentation policies? Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alessandro, and thank you, everyone. First of all, let me just, like my colleagues, thank the OACPS Secretariat for setting these strategies and this approach of bottom-up in building these handbooks. Just to answer your question, I'm going to break it just in a couple of parts. If you want some example of use of this handbook, I come back to the point of governance just mentioned by Chuck in his conclusions. We noticed that governance is probably the best start for us here in Mauritania, and this is looking at the insight provided by the handbook across many across many R&I policies in ACP countries. So we thought, okay, let's get the governance right, anchor all policies and activities related to research and innovation into appropriate legal framework. We saw this as a simultaneously low-hanging fruit, but also solid foundation upon which further the R&I landscape can be built. And as a result, we passed on a research and innovation bill in November last year, review the status of our National Research and Innovation Agency this January, and created an R&I parliamentary committee in March, and also further text has been developed to create specific higher research and innovation schools, thematic, one in agriculture, one in veterinary medicine, because we have a lot of livestock here. So part of our research and innovation strategy. The next part of your question, I mean, this is on the governance level, but the handbook provided also a source of motivation and comfort to our researchers, because through the handbook, the handbook is actually a collective or a catalog of cases similar to Mauritania. So when they face a problem, they can see, oh, I am not alone. This is the same problem in Lesotho, the same problem in Gambia next door, the same problem in South America, and so forth. So that is a good feeling that, okay, we are not alone. We have we face the same problem that other people face in our situation. So that is again another use of the handbook. Yet it is a motivation, because it should encourage our researchers to overcome these difficulties and lead others out of that particular way. Now, the second part of your question regarding decision making, yes, the handbook has also been useful in that it is a reference of case studies and similar situations. So we can always come back to the handbook, look it up for a particular situation, and provide decision makers to, with evidence, compelling evidence to do it this way, that work, or this way, that doesn't work. So the handbook overall is a welcome complement to the effort already deployed by the OACPS Secretariat to build his strategies across ACP countries. So in a nutshell, I hope I kind of given you a little bit an insight of what we do in Mauritania and how we use the handbook here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Hamed. Thank you for your intervention and for the experience you have shared and also the ongoing efforts that are going in Mauritania towards having the implementation of a research innovation policy. Thank you. So we have now the last panelist of these sessions. As we said, this handbook was developed in the framework of the mutual learning exercise, which is very important. So I would like now to invite Amina Christel, Head of Scientific and Technical Cooperation Division of the Ministry of Scientific Research and Innovation of Cameroon, to tell a bit more about the mutual learning exercise. Could you please share with us the value of having this type of exchanges among countries that are facing similar challenges, such as, for instance, the one on formulating and implementing a research and innovation policy? Christel, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you all. Thank you first to the OACP Secretary for the PCF service. As a member of the OACP, Cameroon has benefited of this service. And the first part of this service was that the president, the head of the state led a decree for the special statute of researchers. This harmonized the statute of researcher with that of with those of the university lecturers, and also recognized that independent researcher as main researcher in Cameroon. The PCF service impact was also the reopening works on the creation of the Cameroon National Research and Innovation Fund, which was initiated a year ago. Concerning the mutual learning exercise that gave rise to a handbook, Cameroon took part because it is convinced that sharing experience between OACP countries can be an asset in setting up his national research and innovation strategy. We do not have yet. So this South-South cooperation was an extraordinary experience because it enabled Cameroon to also share its experience of bilingual system R&I management system. So we have two systems, the Francophone one and the English one that we use to manage the R&I. So taking part in this mutual learning exercise also enable us to draw inspiration from good practice from African countries such as South Africa, Kenya, Ethiopia, and also Western countries such as Norway and Swaziland. On the basis of this many experience outlined in this handbook, Cameroon was able to incorporate following aspects into his draft of national inclusive strategy. First, we integrate how we look at how to integrate vulnerable people, independent researcher as a main player in the national research and innovation system, how to coordinate research activity, taking into account the various development sectors and multi-sectors stakeholders, and how can R&I can be see an instrument of diplomacy and national integration. And at least we look at to introduce in this national strategy how to design a policy that promotes the use of research finding into the economic value chain. To put into this practice, the R&I slogan now in Cameroon is one researcher, one enterprise, one student, and one enterprise. Thank you for this amazing experience, and we can talk about more. Thank you, Ali.
Thank you very much, Christel, first for staying within the 3 minutes, much appreciated. I know that it's not easy, and thank you also very much for sharing your experience on the added value of having this kind of exchanges among countries. There is a lot of experience, a lot of expertise in the Global South. We need to emphasize that. We need to share this experience. So thank you again, Christelle. We have learned some aspects about to develop policy, what are the lessons learned. I invite you to go through the handbook to learn more about what we need to take into consideration, what needs to be avoided at the moment of setting up a policy and for its implementation. But we also need to operationalize that policy. And so UNESCO has recently developed a publication on the topic, and I would like to pass the floor to the co-chair also of this side event. And also, again, to thank you all and invite you to please use the chat box for any questions. Thank you all for your time. And Nelly, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, dear Alessandro. Good afternoon, good morning, dear participants. My name is Cornelia Zinova. I work at UNESCO Regional Office for West Africa, and I'll be moderating this second part of event. We will continue the discussion on policy implementation, but in this second part, we really would like to focus in particular on policy instruments as the potential tools and to strengthen and ensure effective policy implementation. In this second part, we will present to you a recent UNESCO publication on science, technology, and innovation policy instruments for the Sustainable Development Goals, a sort of global outlook that will be presented to you. We will follow the presentation also with a small panel discussion with country representatives who had taken part in the preparation of the case studies for this report, and also UN colleagues who have also will provide their views and observations on this topic. And without further ado, I would like to invite the main author of the UNESCO study, Mr. Manuel Ricardo Galindo Moreno. He is consultant in the Science, Technology and Innovation Policy section at UNESCO headquarters, and who will make a brief overview presentation of the UNESCO publication of the policy instruments. Dear Manuel, please take the floor and to make the presentation of the publication. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope that you all see my screen. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for being here with us. As Nelly introduced this session, we will present the publication. The publication is it's live right now, so I think that you will see the link in the chat box. We invite you to review it. But okay, we can start. And UNESCO has been supporting STI systems for a long time, and we have been identifying that policy implementation is a problem, and it's a problem in most of the regions. And that's why we are increasingly paying more attention to policy instruments rather than policies. And with this, in other words, what we mean is that we focus on the technical and operational programs that target a specific issue. These programs that have already resources allocated, these programs that look for measurable outcomes. So in this context, UNESCO decided to develop this publication. It's a publication that combines statistics and case studies to understand how countries implement policy instruments. And this is very useful because it allows policymakers to understand how similar STI issues are being tackled around the world, and provides ideas on how to improve the design and implementation of their own policy instruments. So the publication is structured into 4 main sections. The first section presents some good practices. It practices for policy instrument design and implementation. The second section illustrates how what is the performance of STI systems across UNESCO regions. We review some statistical indicators for this. And the third section, we focus on quantitative data as well as case studies to understand what are the regional trends in STI policy instrument implementation. And of course, at the last section, we present some conclusions and recommendations. In this presentation, we will focus on the last two sections because in Chuck's presentation, we already discussed a little bit the good practices and some of the challenges. So to start, I think that it's always useful to recall what it is the positive relationship that STI performance has with sustainable development. And to do that, in this graph, you can see the positive correlation that exists between countries' performance in the SDG index and their own performance in the Global Innovation Index. This correlation shows that using the right instruments can greatly improve the economic and societal and social benefits from STI investments. And this furthers our case to focus on policy instruments. We already discussed a little bit about GOSPIN, so I will try to go short here, but most of the analysis contained in this publication are based on the GOSPIN information. And with GOSPIN, we have a methodology that allows us to survey STI policy information in a standardized way, in a way that facilitates comparability and analysis. And we have it centralized in a platform that you can see and in the screen, and you can explore in the link that you can see in the slide. And overall, GOSPIN is a tool that supports member states in evidence-based policymaking and also help us build capacities in member states. So now we start presenting some of the analysis that are contained in the Outlook, and we start by an analysis of the keywords that are present on the policy instruments contained in GOSPIN. We examine keywords in the policy instruments because it helps us gain some insights on the focus areas of these instruments across regions. We start with the world. You can see it's evident here that there is a dominant of keywords inherently connected to STI policy. But we need to go a little bit deeper in the analysis, and we do that by looking at regions. So we create regional graphs, and to do this, what we do is a comparative analysis between the world and each region, and this allows us to identify what are the keywords that are more commonly associated with a particular region when you compare this region to the others. So in the case of Africa, for example, we can see that keywords such as health research, keywords such as agriculture, so these are keywords that are more commonly present in Africa compared to other regions. And in the case of Latin America and the Caribbean, we can see we can see a prevalence of keywords like postgraduate, postdocs, and human resources in general. Another dimension that we analyze are the SDGs. So we analyze policy instruments within the SDG framework because we believe that this allows us to understand what is the directionality that governments apply to their policies when they really want to address their sustainability challenges. And we can see in this table that there is a focus on SDG 9, SDG 8, and SDG 4. These results are intuitive because STI policy instruments are almost by definition linked to these SDGs. But what it is important to highlight here is that we have opportunities to use STI policy instruments to target other SDGs more directly. The Outlook also contains the analysis of policy instruments across different dimensions, and And in this case, in this slide, we focus on what are the support mechanisms used in these policy instruments. So by looking at this, at the size of the circles in these graphs, and also the thickness of the lines, you can see what are the most common combination of support mechanisms used in countries within a region. And here you can see that in African countries, they tend to rely on a few key support mechanisms, while in Latin America and the Caribbean, you can see that they have a more varied approach. In addition to the quantitative analysis that we just presented, that we have many more in the Outlook, and we invite you to go to read the Outlook to view them. We engage with officials around the world, officials that implement policy instruments, to better understand how they are put in practice, how these instruments are put in practice, to understand what are the challenges, to understand what strategies do they use to overcome them. And today we have representatives from Chile and Ghana who participated in the Outlook development, and they will share some of their insights. But we move now into the conclusions and recommendations. We group them in a series of blocks. We start with the block related to the Sustainable Development Goals. We already discussed briefly that STI policy instruments are mostly focused on a few SDGs. And I think that it is quite important to further integrate other SDGs into the STI policy instruments. We believe that there is opportunity to do it a little bit more explicitly. Another important point is that we need to broaden the participation of underrepresented groups like indigenous communities. We need to ensure that we include diverse perspectives and diverse knowledge systems. This is essential to enrich our own STI systems. Another block of recommendations is related to the evidence-based policymaking, and here we must emphasize the importance of data-driven decision-making. We think that it's quite important to use platforms like GOSPIN or use platforms like the STIR Compass from the European Commission and the OECD, because they are valuable resources for comparative analysis. It allows us to identify best practices, and also gives us hints about how to contextualize these instruments into the realities of countries. We have an important block of recommendations also related to the design and implementation of policy instruments. And we highlight that it is important to diversify our policy mix. We believe that exploring other instruments, including those that are non-financial, it's essential. We need to address the wider range of needs that the STI systems have, not only funding, right? And that to do that, we really need to broaden our portfolio of instruments. Continuing with the design and implementation, I think that something to highlight is that it might not work the best to maximize how much money each beneficiary gets. It's better to match the financial support that a beneficiary gets with their capacity to implement. So this is mostly about how we fund how do we strategically fund. We need to match our funds with the capacities to implement. Another important aspect is that we notice that the use of methodologies for program design is not widespread. It's not widespread. So it is very important to try to promote the use of methodologies like tree problems, like theory of change, logic frameworks. Try to use result-based management in the day-to-day implementation of policy instruments. And related to these, it is very important to strengthen the institutional capacity for this, for the policy instrument implementation. The last block of recommendations that we have is related to the continuous learning and adaptation. Here, we emphasize the need for strong monitoring and evaluation frameworks. not only within, not only for the policy instruments themselves, but also for the projects that are being supported by the policy instruments. This really enables us to track progress, identify areas of improvement. It helps us adapt the instruments for new circumstances that we might face. And an important point here is that we need to identify also different learning points. And for example, it was found that that one opportunity for learning is the assessment of the applications of competitive funds. When you assess the applications, you can have a view of what are the gaps of the system, what are the gaps of the beneficiaries, and this can inform the development of the instrument, or even it can suggest the creation of new instruments. So with this, we thank you very much for your attention. As we have been saying before, this is only one of many presentations. These presentations, the future presentations, we will have different focuses. We will focus either on different regions, or we will focus on different themes. So you will be hearing from us. Once again, thank you very much. And I give the floor back to Cornelia. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Manuel, for this presentation and for giving us an overview of the publication that was just actually released on science, technology, and innovation policy instruments. Thank you also for putting emphasis on the link of such instruments to the development goals, the SDGs, but also the national development goals. These instruments could really tackle some of these objectives and achieve the targets that different countries have set. Also, you remind us of the necessity to really diversify, to have a broad portfolio of instruments. So thank you very much for this. For this post, and we invite, of course, participants to read the publication, to consult it. The link is in the chat. I would like now to call the discussants to express their views on the concept of instruments, of their experiences, and I would start first with Mr. Fernando Santiago Rodriguez, who is the Industrial Policy Officer at the UN Industrial Development Organization. Fernando is also an active member of the UN Interagency Task Team on capacity building in science, technology, and innovation for the SDGs. So, dear Fernando, in your opinion, why it is crucial to collect information about existing STI policy instruments, such as those that are presented in the case studies, and how the information can serve for capacity building purposes? Thank you. The floor is yours, and if you can please keep the time to up to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Yes. Well, thank you, Nelly, for of course, for the invitation and for the opportunity to comment on the publication. I think this is really a very important one. And let me just put it in the context of the work that we do in the Interagency Task Team, but also here at UNIDO, where we support policymakers in addressing some of the challenges through international policies. I think what many countries say is that they are so unique that they cannot be compared, or there are conditions they cannot really replicate. No, they cannot emulate, a model or a particular experience. But and that's true. We should not be pushing for one-fits-all solutions. But materials like this, what they illustrate is, and particularly the focus that you have on by regions or by countries. What you can do is you offer a set of experiences and materials where countries can try and identify solutions to the problems, but also by looking at some ways in which other countries have done it. And so, highlighting similarities or differences in the regions, in the context in which certain instruments have been applied, but also the differences in how particular these instruments can be designed to meet certain needs. So it's not the same instrument applied everywhere. It's not the same context, and that's an important part. So what I think it's in the end, this report, or actually not only this report, but the previous one as well, what they provide is, some additional material for where we consider this the evidence base necessary to inform policy, and to inform policy in an area that is very sensitive for member states. It's really implementation. Yeah? It's not all about formulating, but also really the doing things, the jump from the strategy setting and the identification of possible solutions to the actual doing of things. And if we link it to the question of capacities, policy capacities, I think a very important material maybe for those of you who like also this interface between research and policy making. And a book that has already maybe some 10 years or so of this, by Fred Carden from the IDRC, where he connects this idea of knowledge into the policy making process. And so what these instruments, we can see on the one hand, they can they exemplify activities, and they exemplify instruments, and that opens, that broadens the scope of the policy horizon. So how to address specific needs or specific problems by looking into different instruments, so the policymakers can have menus or have options on how to move forward. Maybe in combination with activities that that yourself at the UNESCO and other colleagues and the IATT, what we can do is expand also those policy horizons, transform them into actual decision-making or decision-making regimes, and sort of combine with activities where as the mutual learning process that occur, they can identify partners, they can identify peers, they can have dialogues, they can have exchanges with similar, with colleagues who have faced similar challenges. So I think this is the way we can expand the idea of capacities, provide information, provide evidence, but also to try and help those policymakers to absorb the knowledge and then apply, but also being guided by knowing what can work, how it can work in certain contexts, and things that they should avoid. So I think this is an important material that serves as a basis, but that also for discussion, but also as a basis for some of the training, some of the activities that we conduct in the context of concrete activities where we involve policymakers. So I would just thank you again for the opportunity. Thank you again for the material that you're producing, and I look forward for the discussion with other colleagues. Thank you, Nelly.
Thank you very much, Fernando, for these thoughts, and in particular the importance of these materials as reinforcing the evidence base for better and informed decisions, and also to strengthen the capacities also, and expanding the mutual learning and peer learning among countries. Thank you very much, Fernando. I would like now to invite Mrs. Marianne Dorcas Quain, Deputy Director General of the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research of Ghana. I would like, Madame, to ask you, what was the key challenge that you were facing, and how the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research grant that was designed helped you in your institution to address this challenge? Thank you for sharing with us your experience.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question and for this opportunity. The main challenge we were facing was lack of funds to carry out basic research. The CSIR is under the Ministry of Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation, and every year we submit requests for funds to the Ministry of Finance through our sector ministry. Funds coming through to us actually is 86% of what we request for salaries. Then for goods and services, we get 1%. For CAPEX, that is what we use to carry out our mandate, we get 1%. So what we do is to go into the marketplace and compete for donor funding to conduct our research. So we implemented the policy of the CSIR competitive grant scheme, where every project that we get with development partners is charged 15% to our coffers, and out of the 15%, this 15% goes to the institutes, the 13 institutes. Then we charge 15% to the head office. It is out of those funds that since 2016, we instituted the CSI competitive grant scheme, and between 2016 and 2021, we were able to fund research which had objectives that were specific to us. There were research areas that we as a nation needed to bring information to the populace for wealth creation and socio-economic enhancement. This year is due for the third round, but we have put it on hold because we want to take it a notch higher by riding it behind the CSIR Endowment Fund. The Endowment Fund is going to be launched in July, and the staff, the workers of the CSIR are prepared to put forward 1% of their basic salary. We're running it by our various stakeholders. The various projects are going to be charged 2%, and all these will go into an endowment fund, which will provide funds for basic research into areas that usually our donor and projects that we go for, that we win, do not have as objectives, but they are critical areas that will harness the socio-economic development of the country, because we are the organization that has to carry out research and development for the country. So I think I will use this as a platform to invite you all to contribute towards this very laudable initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing with us your experience, and also for sharing the kind of innovative way that you used in your institution to proceed with the design of such instrument. I would like now to invite our first discussant, Mrs. Catalina Terra Rosas, who is the Chief of Advisors of the Under-Secretariat of Science, Technology, Knowledge and Innovation in the Ministry of Science, Technology, Knowledge and Innovation of the Government of Chile. And dear Catalina, I would like to ask, how do you find inspiration, and what are your key resources of information when proposing new policy measures, new instruments, and how do you adapt, in particular, experiences from others to your local context and needs? Thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Cornelia. Good morning and good afternoon to everyone. First of all, I would like to explain the way Chile proposed new policy measures and instruments. We have two levels, systemic and the instrumental one. At the systemic level, we have the Council on Science, Technology, Knowledge and Innovation for Development that builds a national strategy every 4 years that sets the major challenges. Also, we have at the ministry the elaboration of the STI policy and action plan. This is a more operative level. So both strategic instruments are built on robust and high quality evidence based on studies, surveys, impact evaluations that are conducted by the ministry by a public policy department that is responsible for these matters. Also, in these processes are involved relevant stakeholders of all our system, such as scientific and innovation community, universities, and policymakers in a decentralized way. So in another element, our authorities and policy officers participate in different international organizations where the transfer of experiences, good practices, and policy trends are facilitated and discussed. This is a very important space for us to discuss international trends and other experiences and to use all the recommendations that they give. So we use, for example, the participation in this outlook international observatories such as GoSpin and other reports are very important to analyze and to use in all the processes for these strategic instruments. In a more instrumental level, as I said, there's the decision to implement or improve the instruments is based also on study surveys evaluation and the ongoing monitoring of our instruments. We conduct a periodical monitorization of the instruments and their outputs. And both the ministry and the agency have scientific committees to advise on these decisions, to align the instruments and reduce the gaps identified. So for that, we have in both the ministry and the agency, public policy study departments. Finally, to adapt these foreign experiences, there's a dedicated in-house work, mainly with the professional teams from the ministry and the agency.
Dear Catalina, you're muted. If you can just unmute. Sorry. And repeat your last sentence. Yes, thank you.
I'm sorry. So
no, it's just the last sentence.
Yeah, just to focus on the last part of the question on how we adapt the experiences from the foreign experiences. There's a dedicated in-house work, mainly in the professional teams from the ministry and the agency. This analysis is cross-referenced with information of studies, data, and administrative issues. So that's the way we can bring other experiences to our country and to the instrument. So many thanks for the invitation and to be part of this project.
Thank you very much, Catalina, for sharing your views and experience, and very interesting to see how at your level you are also following some international trends and how you are actually integrating such experiences into your own national work. Thank you very much for this. I would like now to normally it was supposed we were supposed to have a question and answer session. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, but I can see that in the chat there were several questions that our presenters have tried to address. This is to say also that we'll organize a series of other dialogues and interactions, so we will have the chance to have more interactive sessions in the near future. With this, I would like now to invite Mr. Dimo Kalowski, who is the staff economist in the Science, Technology and Innovations section of the UN Trade and Development. Dimo is also co-coordinating the UN Interagency task team on capacity building. Dimo will make a brief recap of the key messages and also bring us to the end of this event. Thank you, Dimo.
Thank you, Nelly. Can you hear me? Yes?
Yes, very well.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Please go ahead.
So, as Nelly said, my name is Dimo. What do? I basically write STI policy reviews, and I trade policy experts and staff who work in institutions that have the STI policy mandate in developing countries. I'm as well the co-chair of the IATT. So before everything, first, great thanks to Dr. Ibrahim, the OACPS, and Alessandro and the entire team there for having the confidence to initially reach out to us and engage with us in this very interesting, complex, but at the end of the day, gratifying process. I think that the key to any future success is actually collaboration, and not only in word, but in deed. And I think our efforts here and our engagement between IATT and OACPS is an excellent example of how far we can go when we follow through with a collaborative process, when we work together in a friendly consensus building type of manner, where we all increase each other's confidence in our competencies and engage with the beneficiaries and the stakeholders in the member states. It is a very gratifying experience because very often, as Nelly and Fernando would know in particular, we do a lot of policy research and policy analysis, but the feedback from the field, from the beneficiary countries, from the stakeholders, is never strong enough for us. So this is for us an extremely fantastic opportunity to touch base again with the people that matter in the countries that need the support the most. I found both of the publications excellent, and some of the discussions were really highlighting. I cannot go through a summary. I will just raise two or three points that I found particularly interesting. I think one of the points that was tabled was that as STI policy, perhaps more than many other policies, has a high level of complexity. We see this in the problem of measurement and evaluation. When you have such complexities, when you have so many points of inputs, when you have outcomes that are not that well defined, perhaps, or that are not that well, our methodologies are not that adept to surveying these kind of outcomes. This high level of complexity leads to a certain level also of uncertainty and uneasiness. And in this sense, we also find that many of these problems, as one of the presenters said, actually may stem from the actual formulation of particular policies. Inclusiveness was mentioned as a key issue as well. We do try to view from a perspective of what we call innovation systems. And what does it mean? It means that any innovation outcome, from the science to the technology to the innovation, necessarily comes from an interaction of multiple stakeholders. So on the policy side, it needs to be analogous to this type of process. Innovation does not happen in any one particular place. It happens in many places and many times, and so our multiple stakeholders in policy formulation are also needed. Another interesting thing I heard was this concept of learning from failure. I think this is really important. Very often we are motivated or ordered even to produce case studies of best practice. But I'm always uncomfortable with this because I think there's more knowledge to be had, more wisdom to be had in actual failure. Failure tells us where we went wrong. Where a success, well, sometimes it was really on purpose, sometimes it was premeditated, sometimes it was a result of a very well specified process, but many times it also was just a random event. And the history of innovation is full of life-changing, society-changing innovations that kind of happened without too much premeditation as well. The catalog of policy challenges, I think this is really an interesting perspective, especially from the UNESCO point of view, because this indicates to another issue that we try to introduce in our discussions here, and that is the role and importance of tacit knowledge. There's lots of stuff that we can learn, but mutual learning and sharing of experience is something that is very difficult to actually put in a book, like in a graduate text for a study at a university and so forth. But in fora like this, and through collaboration between multiple UN and other agencies, and in direct contact with member states and beneficiaries and stakeholders there, we somehow bridge this problem of the inadequacy of tacit knowledge transfer, in particular in policy work. So that's just a couple of comments from my side. I think we need to look towards the future and increasing our activities, our partnerships and outreach. I wonder what our next collaboration with OACPS will be, and definitely we will have some discussions with Alessandro in the near future about this. We will continue with our training programs, and everyone who is present here will be notified if there are any online or off or in-person trainings coming in the near future. And you will be briefed on possibilities for participation and so forth. I encourage all the participants here and all your friends who could perhaps not be part of this event to look at both publications, and if you find some time here and there, please develop your own stories and narratives that are analogous to what has been presented in these two publications. Which policy instruments have you come up with? What worked? What didn't work? We want to enlarge this database and enrich the scope of perspectives that we have and share this with everyone. So I think it's very important not to stop with these two publications, but keep at it. Every new policy instrument that we learn was successful in a particular way or ran into very important challenges in a different way, enrich our mutual knowledge. So the mutual learning process should continue even after this in-person event. I would also like to highlight that at this point, there's an ongoing STI forum, which is an important meeting on science, technology, innovation at the UN headquarters in New York. And Nelly and Fernando and myself and others are also a part of this process. And I would invite people through the UN television. It's very easy to find UN TV. It will come up on your screen to follow some of the very interesting discussions there. Our event, this event that we have here online, is actually a part of that bigger event in New York. And finally, as we do in all our meetings, I would like to invite all the participants to turn on their cameras now, so we could have a group photo of this meeting. So once again, thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much to OACPS, and thank you very much to colleagues at AITT. And I hope that we will all see you soon and continue our mutual learning and excellent experiences in capacity building. So thank you.